Hello, hello. Welcome back. And we have our next session. We're already almost this is crazy. These are the last 3 sessions for day 1. It is going by fast, but it has been awesome. Powerful sessions, stories, engagement, just all of it. It has been excellent. Our next keep I can't even talk. It's because I haven't had much sleep. But our next speaker today is Lisa Dodson. She's going to be doing a session called Navigating Your Career Journey. Take it away, my friend.
Thank you. As Ricardo mentioned, I'm Lisa Dodson. I'm thrilled to present today at Dare to Be Great. This is actually the first time I presented this conference. And as I understand, this is the last one for now. We'll just say for now. But I'm glad that I've had the opportunity to contribute while I could. Some of you may know me from my years of participation with Nina at the chapter and the national level. My current role, I'm the Regional Services Manager for the Next Gen Core Services Delivery Team at Motorola Solutions. Um, and what exactly does that mean? So the delivery team, so as PSAPs go around the country and they start to implement Next Gen 911, they're looking at replacing their old legacy call routing solutions with next gen solutions. And that's what my team actually does. We go around the country and we onboard our customers to a next gen core services solution and throw out the baby with the bathwater, the old legacy selective routing systems, getting everybody up to current standards and moving forward with the now what's the reality of what next gen 911 is supposed to be. But I may be in the vendor space today, but the only product that I want to talk to you about today is the product of our careers. Most of us started out in this industry as babies in the PSAT, making a difference every day in someone's life. When I started in this industry, 911 wasn't really a career. The industry was still rather new, and the industry was still not much of a discussion of advancement or crossover between public and private sector jobs. Just, there wasn't much to look at from outside the PSAP. If you were in a vendor space, you probably didn't have much experience with the PSAP themselves. So there really wasn't much crossover of personnel in the industry like you see today, where you see a lot of individuals that started out as babies in the PSAP are now out in the vendor space today and using that experience and that knowledge that they gained in the PSAP to help develop and deploy solutions that help benefit the PSAP even more today than what they did, 30 plus years ago. But make no mistake now, 911 is a profession, it's a career, and it's also a journey. In today's environment, there is so much skill required on all fronts of the industry. There may be times where you, the 911 professional, feel you are stuck where you are in your career with no path forward. How many of you have that feeling? Even I've had that feeling. I think probably every one of us, if we take a moment, take a breath, would probably think, am I stuck where I'm at? I once thought this as well when I hit the proverbial glass ceiling in the department that I was in. But there are more opportunities out there than ever before. So we're going to talk about a little bit about career journeys. And if I'm going to speak about navigating a career, I have to give some of the background on my own journey. Some of my journey will probably resonate with some folks. Starting from the PSAP, we probably all have the same similar stories. We all got around the room, had or met up at the bar, had a drink, or commiserated in a conference room. We probably would have the same stories. My journey kind of started on a fluke. It kind of pains me to say, but I started in the 911 industry 35 years ago. So I'm just going to say I started when I was 5 years old, and we'll just leave it at that because I'm not going to say how old I am. But think pre-wireless calls. We didn't have wireless calls at that time. Green screens, push button call routing, and no CAD system. So very old school. At that time, there was no selective decision in making the career. I needed a job. I had a relative working at the sheriff's office that helped me apply, but that same person also told me don't make a career out of it. Well, I didn't listen to them. I listened to myself and found a passion. Funny thing is, I still don't listen to many folks today when they tell me don't do something. I keep barreling away and do what I think is right for me and my path, which is what I'm going to try to convince all of you as well to do today. You decide your own path. You do what you think is right for your path. Only you can make decisions for your career. So, first off was, public sector. I worked for the Harris County Sheriff's Office for 23 years. I started out as that baby dispatcher, worked my way up to I was a trainer. I was the first ever audio records custodian, and then I was the 911 coordinator, which is a role that I held for about 16 years before I left the sheriff's office. Um, After the sheriff's office, my first big jump was to our countywide, what we called a Harris County Information Technology Department, which was responsible for all the IT in the county for a regional 13 county system, um, doing CAD records, mobile platform. I was basically a system administrator for a couple of years doing that. But I will say that when I made that jump, it really took me out of my comfort zone. What I can say is, looking back now, the advice I would give is don't stay in one place for so long that you feel unable to leave. And that was the one thing that the one major takeaway when I think back on that time, those 23 years in the PSAP, that I felt that I was in not only in that rut, but I felt so entrenched in it that I didn't think that I could leave, that there was a possibility that I could leave, that there were opportunities out there that could help me advance my career and go along my journey. In the private sector, some lessons learned. And I made the jump from county to the public sector, the private sector. Companies get bought out and merged. That was a really eye-opening lesson learned. Scary concept for a first-time private sector employee. So here on the slide deck, you see, I spent 6 years at Tiburon, slashed out, Tritech, slashed out, Central Square. Well, what did that mean? It means I went to work for Tiburon, who got bought by Tritech, who then merged with another company called Central Square. So although there was three different companies, three different email addresses, it was all the same role at the same time. And that was a little chaotic. And if you ever worked in the private sector where you made the jump from the public sector, that is really scary, knowing, well, what is my fate? Am I going to make the cut? Am I going to be in the next iteration of the company? What happens if the company is no longer, viable? So there is some volatility there. But I will tell you that, staying the course and doing what you do best, you can kind of weather that storm. So where I'm at today, since 2020, I'm with Motorola Solutions. I was actually recruited by another 911 industry professional for a startup business unit within the Motoverse. It's been a wild ride. Started out as a project manager. Now I'm managing a group of PMs where we have become a major provider of next-gen core services solutions, getting PCEPs off that outdated 911 technology. And I will tell you, I love this journey, but even that jump in itself, the first year, I questioned myself and said, what did I get myself into? These people are crazy. Is this the job that I thought I was going to take? So, even though we were in this larger, massive company, we really were a startup business unit, and we were trying to get our feet underneath us, and learning more about the team itself. My team is spread out all over the country. We are completely remote, completely work from home unless we're traveling to a customer site. So learning all these new personalities, learning what the new role was, and even the business, that was rather scary itself, but it was just one more hop along that career journey. So even after that first year, and I even honestly told my director, who is still my immediate supervisor, I said, you realize in that first year that I questioned coming here. This was so chaotic that I wasn't quite sure that we were going to make it happen here. But there's always a transition period, and safe to say that I made it through that transition period. So you want to make a pivot, you want to make a career move. And I have two options here on the slide. What I want to say is that you've either decided to make the jump because you feel you're ready or you feel you need to make the jump. And they are vastly different things. And why do I say that? Because you need to make the distinction between what's a career and what's a job. A career is about professional journey. It is a professional journey. It's about growth. It's about expanding your experiences, your knowledge, your professional community, about the connections that you make, things that you feel when you come home that you felt like you made a difference. A job is something you do to earn money, to pay the bills, keep a roof over your head and your family. It's less focused on achievement and more focused on the completion of tasks. So, how many of you feel like you're in a job versus a career? Or does that change from day to day? Could be, right? How many of you love what you do? You have a passion for 911, but you feel like you have a job and not a career. The necessity to make the jump comes from having a job, not that career. And to be brutally honest, I made my first jump out of necessity. I love this industry, but the culture of the agency I was with at the time turned what I was hoping to cultivate into a career, it turned it into a job where every Sunday evening I would start to stress out going into the work about going into work the next day. I would actually probably make myself ill, think about the stress, all the stress every Sunday, thinking about what I'd have to do the next day, where I was causing myself stress related health issues. That stress was manifesting itself in the personal relationships that I had, causing problems at home. To give some clue how bad my stress was, my husband referred to me once as a stark raving lunatic, where when we were discussing that he never wanted me to return there. And now I benchmark myself against that. Is what I'm doing making me a stark raving lunatic? It's kind of a running joke now, but at the time it wasn't a compliment. Definitely wasn't a compliment. But now I use that to say, okay, am I starting to become a stark raving lunatic? What am I doing? How am I is what I'm doing that stressful out that it's manifesting itself outside of the workplace? And because I needed at the time that stress outlet, I would come home and vent for probably an hour because I just needed that avenue of I've got to get this off my chest. I had a bad day, you know, boss kind of rode my tail all day long, talking to me in a negative manner, or these people don't appreciate what you do. You needed an avenue to vent. And for those of you working the PSAT, when you want to vent, you're very vocal about it, right? You may not use choice language, you may not use good language, but venting is a way to kind of release that. And it's, other than other negative manners to vent stress, that was the way I did it. So I became the stark raving lunatic. I would come home and vent for probably an hour, but that was when I realized I was putting all that stress on my family. They were feeling the effects as well. So, how many of you feel like you're in a stressful job where it may be impacting your personal relationships? Is it helping you along your career path? Is that helping you along your journey? It is probably not. So, I made the jump out of the need for a different environment for my own physical and mental health. I would probably debate anyone outside of this industry that may not believe that there are stressors working in the PSAP or that toxic work environments don't exist. They definitely do. I myself can definitely show them evidence to the contrary, as I'm sure that many of you could as well. While it may seem like it's the easiest decision in the world, knowing that you're in that kind of environment, you want out, you feel desperate, you want to make that jump to a new role, even knowing that I needed to make that decision, the length of time that I was in that role was probably to my detriment. I was so entrenched in the community of coworkers that I had. I had a feeling of responsibility for some of them. Some of them I trained. Some of them I had close relationships with. Some of them we've been there so long that you have marriages and children, and you see each other outside of work. So you have personal relationships with them outside of work as well. That and combined with loving the work that you did, for me, I felt ill when I turned in my resignation. I immediately went into panic mode. It's like, what did I do? Am I crazy? What if this doesn't work out? There's a There's a silly phrase called "there's safety in government work." It means there's always something bad, especially in the 911 environment and in public safety. It's always something going on. People do crazy stuff. You'll always have the need for 911. You always have the need for public safety. So, there's safety in government work. Can't get laid off. You know, definitely don't downsize because the volume, the workload continues to increase. But it's daunting to leave a public sector position for the private sector, where businesses are influenced by the economy, customer base. They can afford to downsize because they're not answering 911 calls. They can reduce staff, where PSAPs never reduce staff because the demands just keeps increasing. More tasks are getting assigned to the PSAP. You hear all the time that you've got some new technology or a new application, a new process, a new initiative, and where does that task end up being? Well, it starts at the PSAP. Or you get a new elected official that has their own drive, their own goals that they want to achieve while they're in office, and the first thing they do is, oh well, we need to make the PSAP do this. So there's always work there. But is there really safety in government work? There's a trade-off. And that's what I've learned over the last decade or so. You're assured a paycheck, but if it's just a job and not a career, if it's no longer about growing and achieving, the term safe is somewhat subjective. And you may be leaving something of yourself behind every single day. My subsequent role changes after that first jump, the first one was out of necessity, but other than that, the rest of them are career decisions. And I call it the selective decision making, selective career decisions. I capitalize on opportunities to grow, cultivate skills, learn new things. Did I change the path every once in a while in there? Yeah, because I had to make a decision of what was best for me professionally and personally so that I could continue to grow and get where I needed to be further down on my journey. This is kind of why I consider a career to be a journey. It's not a one stop and done event. It would be nice for all of us if we came out of high school, we knew exactly what we were going to be, we had our dream job, we went and got it, and we stayed there until we retired. Or you came out of college, and you thought, well, this is what I want to be. I'm going to go get it. It's going to give me, all the safety and security that I want out of life, and I'm going to get that job. And that's not how reality works, right? So your career is a journey. It's not a one stop and done event. It's a road trip, taking in each new experience and using it further on down the road. So you've made the decision that it's time for a change, whether or not you're ready for the next challenge or you need to find a new place that reinvigorates you. Start out with a strategy. It should be thought out. A winning career strategy begins with self assessment, understanding your strengths and your weaknesses. How often do you sit down and you think about your professional life? What are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? Unfortunately, in the PSAP, it's so much day to day, call to call. You're always busy. You're always in a hurry. You got things done. That sometimes it's difficult to take a breath and think about those things. And you don't tend to think about those things until you're ready to make a drastic change in your life. But you need to know who you are and what you bring to this world of work. Think about how you can strengthen your existing strengths. Think about what you can do to shore up those weaknesses. Even if you decide to stay, if you're fortunate enough that there is a career path within your agency, maybe there's a role to advancement. If you're in a PSAP that's has a advancement path where you can not only promote up to mid-level supervisor, maybe even a director's position where you're managing the entire PSAP at one point. What do you need to do to strengthen your strengths even further, and what weaknesses you need to work on to make sure that when you decide to push for that opportunity, try to take advantage of that opportunity, that you can achieve that. Over the last few years, I've helped mentor younger professionals as they try to navigate their career journey and go beyond the PSAP, whether it was to another PSAP for an opportunity to advance or just to jump to the private sector space. Especially within the last 4 to 5 years, you see a lot of the younger generation deciding to spread their wings sooner than I think the rest of us have. A lot of the my colleagues that I started out as the baby dispatcher, as I mentioned. We've got more. Unfortunately, we have more years behind us than we have ahead of us. Um, but we stayed in those roles a lot longer. And nowadays, you see the younger generation, they'll spend 4 or 5 years in a job and they're ready for the next one and they're looking to see what they can do. Um, they have more ambition probably than what we did in our generation. So they're looking for that opportunity to advance or jump somewhere else. The key thing that I see though that they focus on that I think trips them up is focusing on a job title. I still hear from a lot of folks, well, I was a dispatcher or I'm just a dispatcher. How can I be only a dispatcher at another agency? And that focus shows up when they try to develop a resume or develop their, let's say, a LinkedIn profile or some kind of networking profile. I've helped with several resumes over the past several years where, not to sound detrimental, but the resume is woefully thin because people do not understand how to take what their role is and communicate that in a way that really shows off their best strengths. It shows off what they bring. So saying that you're a dispatcher, saying that you're a telecommunicator, unless you're in this industry, it doesn't tell anybody anything about what you did. You talk to John Doe off the street and tell them you're a telecommunicator, you're gonna get a blank face. They don't know what that means. They don't know what you do. They don't know the vital thing that you bring to the community, that you're out there every day saving lives for those people that are not having a good day. If you're in the PSAP, I used to say they're not, when we were training new recruits, I always used to say they're not calling here because they had a good day. We are the people that see the worst in everything. And saying that you're a telecommunicator, even sometimes saying a 911 professional, even that kind of gives a blank stare because they don't understand what you actually do. So sometimes I see it's a difficult transition to try to translate that important role over into a piece of paper or over into a networking profile where nowadays LinkedIn is the equivalent to a resume and it's the first impression before you get the opportunity to demonstrate, to talk to somebody about what you know. Is the task of, oh, I enter calls for service into a CAD system or I do data entry, does that really explain to somebody what you do? It may have been 30, 35 years ago, but not any longer. And I think this goes back to a lot of, you hear individuals changing some of the discussion about the reclassification is changing the job descriptions. Not only the job description, but how you think about what your job is has to change as well. You have to be able to translate that into, I look at somebody on paper, look at it on a screen on a profile. I know what they're doing that brings value to me. What is that? What are their strengths that they can bring to my company or my PSAP? If it's another PSAP looking at you, what can they bring to the table? And that seems to be a struggle that everyone has, is because, and it probably is because we're our own worst critic. Even myself, I sit down there, you sit there and you look at a list of interview questions. What would you say are your strengths and weaknesses? And even even after 35 years, I'll sit there and like, well, okay, do I really want to say this? Or does that a strength or is that a weakness? We all struggle with trying to look at ourselves and define ourselves. And that's probably why it's so hard to translate that into a networking profile or a resume so that you can put your best foot forward so that you can, execute on a career strategy. So you need to begin with a self-assessment, figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are. You need to understand what those are. Personally, I think there should be less focus on a job title. There may be a few HR folks out there that'll cringe at this, but my personal belief is that job titles don't mean anything. They are words that can be changed at any time HR does an assessment of responsibilities. In my current position, I have seen jobs where the nature of the job, the nature of the work, the tasks that are performed never change. And I've seen individuals whose title has changed at least 4 times. So that should tell you right there that job titles don't mean anything. It's about the work. What is the work that you're doing? So don't focus on the job title. Focus on what the strengths and the weaknesses are. What are your strengths that you bring to a role? Example, critical decision making skills. There's nothing in if you tell somebody I'm a telecommunicator, John Doe Q citizen off the street. Oh, I'm a telecommunicator. There's nothing in that title that says I make critical decision making skills every single day, twice on Sunday, multiple times a day, probably more times than the average citizen makes. That's different than just saying I'm a dispatcher or I'm a telecommunicator. I'm a critical decision maker, is what I am. Do you have knowledge of, high security, public safety systems? What is that knowledge? Are you, you know, proficient, saying a lot of the words that I see sometimes on resumes says I am proficient in. Well, we're all kind of proficient in a lot of things. It's probably not the best use of a term, but it's all about wordsmithing what you have to give an image of what you want to project. I do like the phrase. I saw this once when I was reading something. It says, create your own sunshine. It may have different meanings for different folks, but to me, it's about getting out of my own head, taking ownership of my own self and what motivates me. And that's what I tell other people they need to do is create your own sunshine. I can't tell you what your sunshine looks like. We all have different things that motivate us. Lots of folks can give you motivational advice, but you need to decide what inspires you. Now, we can all say, oh, we all have a passion for 911, but what does that mean? Does that mean I'm helping people every day? I'm trying to make a difference. What aspect of that is it you want to be part of a team that's making a difference? You just have to figure out what that is that inspires you and what's going to help you make that transition from it being a job to being a career. Establishing your North Star. Decide up front what your North Star should be. And North Star means, what is that one thing that I look at that's always keeping me on the same path? Kind of like, what's the end goal? What's the end result? Where do I want to be? Wherever I am, can I look up and see where that path is supposed to be? What's your direction? I'll be honest and tell you that it took me a while to really realize truly what that is. And that was only just from experience. But I've come to find out you can change your goals. You can even change your focus areas, but your true north doesn't change. And what I learned over 35 years, and even probably more within the last 10 to 12 years, is my true north is, as far as a professional life, is 911. So along that journey, kind of got broadened. It took some broader focus on public safety, but then I had to come back in and look and focus solely on 911. So I did change my goals up a little bit there. Some of it was out of the necessity, like that first big jump that I made. But then, coming back into the world of what I do now with Next Gen Core Services, that made me steer back into and make sure that I was still looking at that North Star. When you set that, you need to make room for flexibility. And why I say that I sometimes got off my path there. Make room for flexibility. Does the job or the role get you where you want to go? It doesn't have to be perfect, right? So if you're looking at an opportunity, whether you're looking for an opportunity because you need a new challenge, or you're looking at an opportunity because it's time to get out of here, right? Does it have to be perfect? No, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect. If we all had the ideal job that we think of in our head, there would be no reason to challenge ourselves anymore. There would be no kind of competition within your own self and against others. Everybody had what they had, and we'd all be content. Does that role, that new job, give you more experience? Does it give you more knowledge? Does it broaden what you have today so that you can learn more? The one thing with this industry is it's, especially over the last 15, maybe even 20 years, it's changing so much that you have to keep learning. You have to keep growing. You have to keep expanding your knowledge. And one way that I do that is staying involved with Nina, because when I first started getting involved with Nina, I was still in the Peace app. I knew our day in, day out operations. I kind of lived in a bubble. I wasn't aware, I knew there were other Peace apps around us, but I didn't know that they had the same challenges that we had. I didn't realize they had the same problems, or that they were trying to solve the same problems that we had. Um, I didn't know what was out there, and being involved in Nina got me outside of that bubble. I was able to network, learn about what other PSAPs are doing, learn that my PSAP wasn't the way to do everything elsewhere. Not all, what I can say now is not all PSAPs are created equal. As much as we try to standardize as much as possible with how we handle calls and process things, not everything fits everyone. Everyone operates differently. So you would think, well, I came from the large PSAP, so the way I do things must be the way it needs to go. That's not necessarily true. So, get outside of your bubble, and, you find out there's other things outside of your world that, it helps you learn that, okay, I need to learn about this. I need to learn about that. And, you know, picking up on a role that may not be exactly what you want. Is it 75% of what you want? It may be an opportunity for a while. Does this get me where I want to be? And that was one of the jumps that I made. When I first went to the private sector, I was doing project management for a CAD records mobile company. And that's what our focus was, CAD records mobile. It didn't have 911 call handling applications. So it kind of veered me off of my true north there, my North Star. But it allowed me to expand upon the knowledge that I already had. When I left the sheriff's office, I had this title that is not flattering now, but I was known as the CAD girl. I did anything related with the CAD system. Um, so I jumped and went to a vendor that did the CAD, same vendor that we were using in the PSAP. I was like, well, I'm going to use this opportunity. This is going to help me learn. And I did learn. I learned about records. I learned more about NIBRs and records than I ever wanted to know while I was in that job. Learned about mobile systems and how they interact with CAD. But what that did is it expanded my horizons. It expanded my knowledge so that it made when you think of the whole public safety ecosystem, I had that information. I had that experience. I was working with other PSAPs that also had those systems. So it was very helpful for my career path. So when I decided that I no longer wanted to be CAD records mobile, that when an opportunity came to me that says, hey, you can get back into 911, I jumped on that. Because even though I'm doing next gen core services systems, that public safety knowledge is still useful. You don't lose that knowledge. It helps you become a more well-rounded individual. So think about the job, the role that you may have an opportunity for. Does it meet 100% of what you want to do? Maybe not, but does it get you where you want? And is it better than the situation that you're in today? Also, be your own pitch deck. Your career journey is your own pitch deck. So, I see it's amazing how individuals like Ricardo and some other people today, they're coming out of the shells of per se and really promoting 911 as an industry. You see so many folks, so many people of the younger generation behind me, where they're creating podcasts, they're out there training, they're creating on training platforms. None of that would have been thought of back in the 80s. But now you're seeing these people come out and they're creating their own pitch deck. Basically, they're trying to use their own career journey, their own path, and they're using it as that pitch deck. This is what I do. This is the knowledge that I pass along. So that's what you need to learn to do, is being able to promote your own self, talk about what your knowledge is, your strengths, your weaknesses, what you can share to others, so that those coming behind you can learn from those as well, and hopefully take upon what they learn from you and do better themselves. You know, We think about ourselves that we've people that we've trained. You know, you want them to do better than you did, right? So you want to grow those people, uh, cultivate their career journey so that they're even more successful than you were. Each new role or job will bring on feelings of imposter syndrome. Sometimes you may get a big role, but you may not be the big fish in a small pond anymore. Sort of like the transition between high school and college. You know, you remember when you graduated high school, you were the seniors, you thought, you ruled the world, but then you go to a college that had so many more people and you were just a little drop in the bucket. Nobody knew who you were anymore, right? Now you're the junior person, junior voice. It may be intimidating and you've got to relearn that demeanor, that confidence back up that you had when you were that senior. Your instincts may be to be quiet while you kind of read the room per se, but remind yourself of the reasons why you're there. You obviously accomplished something that was noticeable. I'll just say create yourself what we call a success file, even if it's a hypothetical success file. Every time you have an accomplishment you feel good about, or something you've done that you get positive feedback on, file that in your success file. So that when you start to question your skills, whether you think that they're actual skills or just it's dumb luck, pull out that file and remind yourself who you are. Don't think I just got lucky to get that promotion. There was something that you did that made yourself stand out to get that promotion. Listening to my career progression earlier, it may sound like I've been lucky, but maybe after 35 years, I almost said 50 years. Oh my God. I'm not that old. Um, but after 35 years, I like to think that some of it's probably 50% luck and 50% selective decision making. Meaning, some of the roles I fell into my lap by making the right connections, but I selectively acted upon those. There were some opportunities that I did turn away, that I didn't feel they were a right fit, or they weren't at the time attractive enough to me that I wanted to take the risk and make a jump. So I did turn some away. Perfectionism. Because of the nature of this business, we have built this mentality that manifests itself into perfectionism. That begins at the PSAT level. We have to get the protocols right the first time. There's the fear of failure. What happens if we fail at our jobs? Mistakes mean lives. How many times have we drilled that? And we probably should stop drilling that into our trainees. When you make a mistake, it can mean somebody's life. Somebody could die. It does not really cultivate something in an individual to say, should I be here? Because it got to be a joke. A small story was when I was still in the PSAP and I was managing the training program. We like to say that we probably eat our young. How many in the PSAP can relate to that? That we kind of eat our young, especially as trainers, that we want them to succeed, but the first sign of weakness, the first sign of they can't get something, they're like, they're out of here. Nope, we're cutting them loose because we don't have time to deal with this. So we eat our young, basically. Got to be a running joke on one of the academy classes that we were running. We had our own academy, and we had this class. It was about 15. I take that back. It was about 10 new hire employees. And the way we trained individuals, they came in. If the timing worked out, they would go directly into academy and not on the floor. But most of the time, they would start out with a trainer, a CTO, on the floor for a couple of weeks until such time we had enough individuals where we could have an academy. So we had about 10 individuals in this academy, and we were kind of, we had milestones in the academy where it was pass or fail. And you had a strike system where if you failed an exam you had an opportunity to make it up, but if you failed the second one you were out. It got to be kind of it's sad to say, but a running joke in this one academy class where some of them that were not successful at the lunch break time, we would pull them into my office and we would let them know, hey, we're going to let you go. And and for the most part, we didn't really let them go. We didn't terminate them. However, what I found is most of those individuals were probably, they may not have been a good fit for in the PSAP, but they were a good fit somewhere else in the department. So we did make every um, chance to find them, put them in a placement somewhere else. We weren't that cruel, but it got to be a running joke that they would disappear after lunch. So the joke was that we were having them for lunch, and that's where it comes into eating your young. So we were eating them for lunch, and they weren't coming back to class after lunch. In this class, this particular group of candidates that just weren't a good fit for most of them, and they were washing out from our academy. But that's the way we are. We breed into, we can't have mistakes, and we don't want those problems in the PSAP, and we don't want to continue uh, investing time and uh, dollars into training somebody that we don't think is going to be a good fit. So we focus so much on things getting the first time and the fear of failure that we pretty much breed into our PSAPs perfectionism. But when perfection is the aim, everything else falls short. It also can mean that success is never internalized. And when you internalize success, you want that spark, or you want to be able to perpetuate, you don't want to perpetuate those insecure, fraudulent feelings of imposter syndrome. Or you just continue the cycle of, you work your butt off, you're trying to prove yourself and others that you can do the job or the task in front of others without fault. And that's not going to happen. It always causes more stress on, not on yourself, but on others as well. So another avenue where I can go home and be a starving lunatic. You need to separate accuracy and correct actions into their own buckets so that don't bleed into everything else. So perfection, there's a being accurate, being professional, and that's different from being a perfectionist. So we need to stop thinking of, we need to be perfect in every single one of our jobs. We are humans. We're going to make a mistake. It's about learning from those mistakes and making sure that you don't make the mistake the second time. Comparing ourselves to others, don't fall into the comparison trap. You know, even in the PSAP community, in the PSAP itself, it can be somewhat competitive. If somebody else was being looked at to be given like the role of a trainer, or the opportunity to be a shift supervisor or something like that, and you aren't, it doesn't mean it's a comparison. But it does breed feelings of inadequacy. What is it about me that they didn't see, and they selected someone else? Well, are you promoting yourself? Are you being your own pitch deck? Are you making sure that you're there and that they know what you can bring to the table? So, don't compare yourselves to others, because we're all kind of different and we all bring something different to the table. We're not all 100% clones of each other. You should never assume that, others are better than yourself. Uh, I call this me time. What's the growth process on my career journey? First off, you need to do a personal assessment. If you're thinking about making that jump to another job, whether it's another job within the PSAP, whether it's to another PSAP, maybe it's completely out of the public sector and into the private sector. Do a personal assessment. What do you bring to the table? Drop the titles and look at the skills that you have. What are the assets that you bring to the table? Are you stagnant in your current role? I have a personal belief that if you're not continuing to learn, I call myself a lifelong learner. I like to learn new things. I'm constantly looking at other, whether not only learning from the Nina community, but I'm all the time on like different learning platforms. The whole thing about AI right now is blowing up. Trying to soak in as much of that as possible. So any kind of new topics or whatever, I'm a lifelong learner. To me, that's how I grow. And if you're stagnant in your own role, is it because you're not learning or you're not experiencing things? What do you need to do to become unstagnant? Are there growth opportunities where you're at? Um, one of the in addition to why I left, I did that first jump out of necessity. I was at a glass ceiling. I was in a department where to be at the management level or the director level, you had to be a peace officer. I was a civilian employee. I did not want to become a peace officer just because I wanted to be a director. That was never going to happen. And that, unfortunately, with a lot of our peace apps, that's the reality. Especially 35 years ago when I started, even as much as probably 20, 15 years ago, a lot of peace apps were still with that kind of structure, what we call like the paramilitary type structure, where you have a blend of certified and civilian personnel, where the management structure is the certifieds. Well, that doesn't give much of a career path for the civilian personnel. And I had hit a ceiling. I knew that I was never going to get to where I wanted to be. And that probably contributed a lot to my stress on that career journey where I needed to go. So if you can't grow anymore, it's time to find somewhere else to be. Is that job serving you anymore? If you feel you've hit a ceiling, you're not growing, you're not expanding, you're not learning, then it's time to go. Meaning, that in your personal assessment, that job is not serving you any longer. It is a job, it's not a career. You need to conceptualize, where do you want to go? And I'm not talking about just, what agency, the name of an agency, the name of a company. Where do you as an individual want to go? Do you have, ambitions of being, I want to be a director at a large PSAP, or I just want to be a director, I want to be a director, I want to be a trainer, oh, I want to be in sales, I want to be a developer, I want to learn to develop solutions that 911 PSAPs can implement, I want to be a coder, something like that. Where do you want to go? Doesn't have to be, pick out, oh, I'm gonna go work for Apple or work for Elon Musk. No, what do you want to do? So it's kind of like, as a grown up, you're asking yourself, what do you want to be when you grow up? But where is the uncomfortable zone? If you're not uncomfortable, then you're not growing. If you're comfortable where you're at, then you're not. I'm gonna back that up. If you're comfortable where you're at, you're not growing. And that's where we kind of end up becoming stagnant in our careers. Where if you're comfortable where you're at, and you feel safe, you tend to stay that way. You need to be in an uncomfortable zone, because that's the only way you can be in a position where you're trying to figure out things, where you're trying to learn more, where you're trying to figure out what's the next step. Can you see that my next step, is it one big jump or is it little steps? Like I did, as I went to work for a company to do CAD records mobile. That wasn't the big jump for me. That was a step. And then take the time to do personal investment. Approach yourself as your own project. You need to look at yourself and say, what do I need to invest in myself to get where I need to be? Where I've got my conceptual plan on what I want to be when I grow up. What do I need to do to get there? So investing in yourself, a lot of folks, myself included, and others that I know of, we went back to school, we got degrees. When I started out in the Peace app, I had like a couple of hours of college. I eventually went on and got my bachelor's and my master's degree. That was me. Those were like personal items for me. I felt like getting my education was important. And at the time, education was a lot of emphasis when you go to apply to jobs. A lot of jobs were putting a lot of emphasis on whether or not you had a college degree. Nowadays, it's kind of a blend. Okay, yeah, you've got this degree, but do you have the experience that goes with it? Well, that's part of the investment myself. How do I get the experience that I need? You may have to make adjustments as necessary in that investment. So not only is it getting education, is it networking? I highly recommend networking. It's funny that I'm giving this presentation, but recently The Women in 911 group, we recently did a webinar, and part of that webinar, they did like a personal assessment. So you went online, you did a quiz about different aspects of yourself, and it gave you a score. And then during the webinar, we kind of compared scores each other with our peers. And it was funny because one of the categories was sociability. I can't really say the word very well, which is fine that I can't say the word because I got a low score on it. Basically, it said I was the wallflower, where I tend to gravitate to people that I know at a networking event, and I am uncomfortable going up to strangers. But here in a giving a conference session, I am somewhat more comfortable in that, although it took a while to get that. I had to invest in myself. I had, this is really being an uncomfortable zone. That's how I put myself in the uncomfortable zone, was I put myself out there. Um, so for those of you that struggle with giving presentations or giving training, even when I was doing training uh, PSAP employees, first 10 minutes I'd get up in front of them, I felt like I was going to be ill. Then once you get into it, you forget all that. You just keep going on, you keep talking. So, that's part of the uncomfort zone, but that's how you learn too, right? You get up into this kind of role, a lot of public speaking, and not so much. And when I say public, so get up in front of speaking for each other. You're in an industry now that we interact with people that are on the other side of the country. And nowadays we're talking about people that are on the other side of the world. The previous presentation talked about how 911 is operating in other countries. And now we have the opportunity to network with those individuals, find out what they're doing in their communities, and being able to get out there and talk to people, to network with people, is how you can learn more. So if you're just starting out in your career, I highly recommend networking. Not only does it give you contacts, it could help you get a mentor. And that's another thing that really about investing in yourself, a personal investment. Find a mentor, find somebody who maybe has had a similar path to what you think you want to have on your career. Similar careers, how do I get where you're at? What did you learn? What did you do that I don't want to do? Like, what mistakes did you make that you would not repeat? Or what things would you do that you would repeat? So invest in yourself, you know, learn all the time. Never be in a position where you think you don't have anything new to learn, because in this industry, it changes. It's changing so much from day to day, month to month. We hear, right now we've got the big push with the FCC report and order, um, with delivering I3 calls to a PSAP. There's going to be so much work involved with that. And the next thing coming down the road, we got AI. The last couple of conferences, we've been talking about artificial intelligence and how how the PSAPs and how the 911 industry can benefit from AI. 10 years ago, when you mentioned AI to me, I was like, it wouldn't have happened. Nope, we ain't going to do it, because all we could think about was AI is going to replace a job. Now, PSAPs are so overwhelmed with work, we're looking at it, how can AI help take some of that load off? So there's always something changing in this industry. So, keep learning. It helps you grow. Networking, find a mentor, and you don't even have to proactively find a mentor. Find that person that you're comfortable talking to, that you can bounce ideas off of. There's a lot of mentorship programs. When I started 35 years ago in this career, there was no such thing as a mentor. It was kind of like all men for themselves. Now we've become a lot more evolved, where we know that in order to develop the next generation of leaders, the next generation of employees in this industry, mentors are a good thing. And there's nothing to be ashamed of to have a mentor. So there's a lot of, I know that a lot of PSAPs have mentor programs now. A lot of companies have mentor programs now, and even within the NINA, Women in 911, we have a mentoring program. So it's all about trying to bring up the next generation, because at some point, folks like myself, we're going to retire and we're going to rejoin the world. I like to say working gets in the way of life. One day I won't have to work for a living, and I'll be able to just live life. So we got to be able to make sure that those that we leave behind are ready to step up to the plate and carry on the mission just as well or even better than what we've left it. But you need to make adjustments to your personal investment, depending on what path you go down. If you have to make a little veering off the course every once in a while, change what how you invest in yourself. So I've talked a lot about my career journey, being a part, and that's why I say thank you for being a part of my career journey, because this is kind of outside of my comfort zone. Was talking about why I made the big jump. I loved 911. I loved working in the peace app, but I had to get out of there. And talking about what I went through and the reason why I had to make that jump, that's kind of a very personal moment. I've told a couple of people, but telling it now, we've got about 800 people here now that's listening to why I left the Peace app. I was in a toxic environment. It wasn't going to be part of my career. I thought at the time that it was going to be part of my career, but it was not. And I had to make that pivot. And I will tell you now that it was probably the best thing that I did. It took me about 2 years after I left to realize that. But even though I made that jump out of necessity, my journey's not over yet, but it was definitely a stop that I had to make on that journey. And I've been making selective career decisions ever since then. So don't be afraid to change positions, change your roles, change agencies, change your focus. It's all part of the journey. So hope that, if you guys got some things out of this. Um, Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always willing to talk about this and help anyone. I always have some folks that will reach out to me, and whether or not whether my company's hiring or if I know somebody else is hiring, or just to bounce ideas off of, like, well, this is what I want to do. What do you think? I'm always willing to talk to anyone that's trying to make a positive impact on their careers. So I see here in the chat, let's see here. We got Susie that says, I retired in 2017 from my mental health. And Susie, that's exactly why I left. I made that big jump. It was my mental health. Like I mentioned before, I was stressing myself out. I was making myself ill before I'd go into work every Monday. And you don't realize what that does, not only to your mental health, but your physical health. For the physical health part of it, what I realized what was happening to me at the time, I did not realize that for probably the last 2 years of that role, I was clenching my teeth, biting my gums, because I was not venting at work, and I was coming home and venting it, being the stark raving lunatic, venting at home. But after I left, about 6 months after I left, I realized I was clenching my teeth so much that I cracked my teeth. I didn't take a break, but at least um, you know, I took a pivot. It got me out of that environment. I was glad that at least didn't throw in the towel and say, okay, I'm getting out of this industry altogether. I took a little bit of a detour, broadened my horizons, and it led me right back into specifically into 911, which I'm glad that it did. Um, so I'm glad to see that, some folks, you realize that you needed some kind of break. Um, but doesn't have to be a long break. You could choose to make it as little or small as big or as small as you want, but you have to take time to focus on you. And if your job, or if that there's a job now and it's not a career, it's not serving you. And that's the thing I want to say is make sure that what you're doing serves you. We may work for the bigger ecosystem of 911. We're serving others, but you need to serve yourself before you serve others. So, any questions?
All right. Well done. Very well put as well there at the end, on what serves you and what doesn't serve you. They're just all the points you hit on. I think one of the biggest things as well is for people to know that it is okay to go from frontline to CTO or to supervisor. When I was in dispatch, it was kind of the same. Like there were three opportunities that I had to go to supervisor, and I just kept saying no, like, no, that's not for me. I don't know that one, that I could do it, but two, because I felt like, oh, I'm going to be moving into a different spot. am I gonna lose my friends? Like, is this, is it gonna be weird or what's it gonna be like? So that was a little hard, and but people just kept saying like, no, like we want you to do this, and that helped as well. But then when I left, dispatch to work on the private side, that was another thing. It was like I needed that permission, like, that it was okay
Yeah,
from my own folks because I felt like I was betraying them, right off the
that's
bat. And
exactly the way I felt, and that was part of the
yeah.
reason why I was ill when I put my letter of resignation in. I was like, I'm leaving these people, and I felt guilty. But
Yeah.
you got to remember, you're not doing something against them. You're doing something for yourself. And even part of Ricardo, even part of your career journey, you're still in 911, but look where
Yeah.
you're at. It took a different path.
Yes, yeah, and I think that's again one of the biggest things, especially with your story, your presentation, and what a lot of people have been saying as well is, um, it's that path. It's the path that we go on, and sometimes goes a different way than you ever thought it was going to go. So I know
Exactly.
for myself, and it sounds like the same for you as well. Things
Yeah.
they go different ways and stuff. But yeah, we're still in 911. We're still promoting and and telling people that it's okay to promote and do the things that you want to do within the center. A lot of people will end up doing different things within the center that let's just say streamlining a couple things. For example, we ended up doing, instead of our silent observer being something that we're writing down all the time, we made it electronic. And so people were doing that, and that was even just one more step into working more in the tech side of 911 within the center. And so there's just a lot of different ways that you can do it. But yeah, sometimes it's tough, and you kind of feel like you need that permission a little bit, like that it is okay, that it's okay.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
this has been excellent. There was a question in there, but it was a question that I answered already. It was just somebody wondering if this was going to be available. They got called out to the floor and they wanted to watch the rest of it. So they just wanted to make sure that they would be able to come back to replay it. And I said, "Yes, definitely. Yeah, you'll be able to come back and replay it and everything." And it looks like
Yeah, like there's some meaning behind that too, right? He's like, oh, well, I
yes.
got to do this task, but I need to come back and figure out what my career path is.
Right, yeah, exactly. So, yes, no, this is awesome that, we were able to do this, that you were able to come on, share your story, your path, and, inspire others as well. And please, just like Lisa said, reach out to her. She's on LinkedIn. I see her on LinkedIn all over the place. So, yeah, make sure to check that out. And Lisa, again, thank you for everything and for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So for everyone who's watching, we're going to go to the next one. The next one starts at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, and that is going to be with Barry Fury, and he's doing a session called "Get Over It: How Living in the Past Sabotages Our Future." So we'll see you all in the next one.